Chuck, we are back. It's Chuck and Chris from Occupy here with another Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Mania 4 draft. And we have the first 2 weeks of the preseason behind us. We've got just 3 more days of preseason football where we can hope and pray for all of our players to survive and make it to the regular season. A little bit of a scare with Terry McLaurin last night, but some positive reporting coming out of Commander's camp that he should be okay for the regular season. Chuck, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about, all the things that have been happening in preseason, just how wild these draft rooms have been lately. So lots of player takes to get through today, I think.
I think the last time you and I did a show together, it was either right after the news started to break with Ezekiel Elliott or Dalvin Cook, or potentially, I don't know if you and I have discussed that together at all. I might have done a show with Brian on it. So, like you said, there is a lot for us to go through. I am going to jump into a Best Ball Mania 4 here. Chuck, you are pulling me out of bed for a draft here. I'm going to cater to the West Coast audience tonight. I'm happy to do that. You've been more than accommodating for the East Coast audience several times during our shows together. So happy to bring this to the PST, if you will, today. Looks like jumping right into a contest that's about to start, waiting for one more person here to start this draft for $3 million to first. I was going through my entries so far, Chuck, and I have had outrageous luck with picks on the first half of the draft board, and timing couldn't be any better because, as I said that, I ended up with the first overall pick in the draft tonight. So, Chuck, my strategy for the first overall pick is to just take Justin Jefferson. But if you have any other thoughts on that, I'd be willing to listen to them for the next few seconds here.
To me, I think Justin Jefferson is just so far above anyone else. Just I'm banking on him scoring a touchdown this season because he didn't really score touchdowns last season. And then he still put up those monster scores in a lot of the games where just the receptions, the yards, zero touchdowns. So I think he's the best pick in fantasy, and it's not close. So I used to think the first pick was so valuable because of Justin Jefferson, and then you get the 24th and 25th pick. But now I don't really love the 2-3 turn, so I'll be interested to see how you handle this.
All right, let me just pull up my exposures really quickly here. And a couple of these are at the number 2 pick because, again, a great strategy at the number 2 pick is to take Jamar Chase unless somehow Justin Jefferson falls to you. But
Mhm.
I will go ahead and lock in Justin Jefferson here, and we'll let the board go, and we can talk through some things here. I'll see if I can seamlessly do this. This is my exposure kind of workbook that I have for Best Ball Mania 4. I've got not a little over 9% Justin Jefferson. I have him on 6 of 62 teams. I guess is going to be 7 of 63 now. But going over my exposures to draft pick slots, this is the sixth time I've had the number 1 pick so far. I've had the number 2 and the number 3 6 times each, at the number 4 8 times each. I've only had the 11 and the 12 5 times combined, Chuck, in my entries here, which, going through some things and trying to see which players I have less of. I'm like, why do I not have certain players? I like these players in my projections. A lot of them go in that range of the draft board, the opposite end of the first round. So I just think that's an interesting thing to be aware of from like a big macro perspective. Is if you're only entering this contest a couple of times, or you're
Mhm.
entering it a bunch of times like I am or you are, like the players you're going to get in your portfolio are somewhat predicated on what pick you get. So it was an
Oh yeah.
interesting learning exercise for me to kind of go through that and put that together. So I got everybody back on the draft board now, though, because that's what you came to see. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'll let you jump in here after this. Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 7 overall. I happened to notice on a show that really, really obviously talented company analyst over at Established to Run, Adam Levitan did a DraftKings draft, a $555 draft live on the ETR channel. I believe it was either earlier this week or at the end of last week. And he took Amon-Ra St. Brown in the first round. And we know the impact that the ETR content has in the fantasy football space. We're not stupid, Chuck. I've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown go consistently in the second half of the first round since that show. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that's the reason why this is happening now.
Oh yeah, these guys have a lot of power. I mean, there's only so many, large best ball content providers, and the ones that are established to run. They're great, great guys, and so I kind of get it. But with half PPR, I don't know how much I love it on this site. Like I like it on the other side, I think more because of the full PPR.
I
but it's on. He could be a top
yeah,
three receiver this year.
I will say, and we can go back and watch the tape. We probably won't. You'll just probably take my word for it at this point. Although you might remember when we first started doing these shows in May, I did say I didn't really get why Amon Ra was going in the second round. He kind of pops as having top five wide receiver upside for me in my own projections this season, which are available to Occupy Discord subscribers for free in our Underdog Best Ball channel that we have there. I did just update them for some of the news through the first couple of weeks of preseason and training camps, and I still have Amon Ra as my wide receiver five on the year. So
Okay.
if you are into Amon Ra St. Brown this year, if you're only going to be drafting a handful of lineups, I will just say that I do kind of tail that suggestion and think it's fine if you want to reach for Amon Ra here in the back half of the first round. I mean, all you're really doing at wide receiver is taking him over. You know, the guys you see that have been selected here, Diggs, Lamb, Brown, are really the first round picks that you're reaching over to take Amon Ra, and I don't think it's crazy that he outscores those guys this year.
No, I mean the range of outcomes is so tight on these guys. Like it's not that big of a difference. I don't think it's really just whoever scores the most in week 17 is going to be the guy that uh, should have went ahead, I guess.
The just speaking of my exposures, I'm not sure where you land on this, but having virtually no exposure to picks 11 and 12 so far this year, like Nick Chubb, who just went at pick 16, that's a player I actually still surprisingly have 0% of, Chuck. And I've kind of
Uh,
figured out, I think it's because he's not really there where my picks are falling. I want to take him, but he's just never really there for me. So that's something that I'm keenly aware of as I make some more teams here to close out the summer, and I'm going to try to force Chubb into a couple of my lineups because there are certain players I'm fine fading and being like, you know what, if that's the player that burns me, I'll just live with it. Chubb is not one of those guys. I definitely want some of him.
oh, I agree. I ripped off. I think I only ended up getting like 30 of the puppy threes in last week, and so I don't know if you remember. I had a ton of Jamar Chase exposure, and I actually checked my pick numbers after you made a comment about it in Discord. And 2, 3, 4, 1 in order is 15%, 12%, 12%, 9%. Like I was getting 15% the number two pick. That's twice the average. So it's definitely evened out over the last couple of weeks. I've gotten the two pick once.
Man, so this is nuts. I think these three quarterbacks have pretty consistently gone in the second round. And like you were saying earlier, this turn gets really difficult. I still think the correct thing to do here is load up at wide receiver a little bit. So Devontae Smith and Calvin Ridley's price has been somewhat inflating since the preseason started. The usage is strong for Ridley with Trevor Lawrence. We've got a wide receiver one for Jacksonville here versus a wide receiver two for the Bengals. It's really the decision point here. If I want to take another wide receiver here, Chuck, I've got a lot of Higgins already. So I think just from a diversification standpoint, Calvin Ridley is a pick I'm willing to force here to get as my third receiver and go Jefferson, Smith, Ridley with the first three picks.
Hey, I don't hate it.
But
I'm
I have not. I'm talking myself into Calvin Ridley. I still think 2 years, almost 2 years at this point removed from competitive football. Yes, he's looked good in preseason and limited opportunities with Trevor Lawrence, but this is not one of my like must-have players this season. I think I'm just trying to make sure I don't get burned by not having some Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, I have exposure to pretty much everyone on the board except Debo Samuel. I still have 0% of. But like most players, I'm willing to take if I, like you said, it's a difficult pick, and at the 2, 3, there's no obvious combo that we want to go with there. So just take who you want.
It's interesting to me that we both have 0% Debo Samuel so far this year, Chuck. So we are of one mind there as well. For me, just relative to that, I've got him and Ayuk projected pretty similarly. So I tend to take Ayuk instead of Debo. Plus, they go in different ranges on the board, so it's easier to get to Ayuk. Another duo that I kind of have a similar ranking on with a much, much more um, or a larger disparity, excuse me, between their pick slots. Jerry Judy and Cortland Sutton with Denver. I
Mhm.
kind of feel like the 5 round difference there that they have roughly is way off. I've got a lot more Sutton than Judy this year, and I like both, but I just have more Sutton.
I have a lot of both, but I have not been clicking Judy recently at all. No. So I agree with you there. It's too much. On that note, kind of though, with Calvin Ridley, I've been really in on Zay Jones at ADP, and I'm even reaching for him by about a round. Like typically, I was taking Tyler Boyd in that range, and now I've switched to taking Zay Jones a little bit.
It's funny because before the preseason games, I was like, man, I'm taking Zay Jones a lot. I almost feel like I've got too much Zay Jones. Then we get a couple of drives from Trevor Lawrence and the starters, and what we learned is Zay Jones was out there in two wide receiver sets with Calvin Ridley, and Christian Kirk, even despite that big contract the Jaguars gave him, was relegated to three wide receiver sets. Chuck, so
Mhm.
I'm not completely like sounding the alarm bell on Christian Kirk. I think he's going to be usable this year in fantasy football, but we definitely have to be more interested in Zay Jones in his double digit round range versus Christian Kirk in the fifth round, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's funny because so I mentioned on a previous stream the reason I was in on Zay Jones last year was just only because of his contract. And I go and look at the Jaguars contracts. I'm like, I wonder who's paid more. And yeah, Calvin Ridley is the higher paid receiver.
I can't wrap my head around, other than hype here, Chuck, why Fields and DJ Moore are up a full round each in this draft, at least, because of a screen pass. What do you think of? I know you like DJ Moore. It's one of
Yep.
those kind of advantage moves this year where you feel like the field is lower on that duo, and maybe if it pops off, like that'll be good for you in a high risk environment. But I know that that was a take you had when they were going pick 45 to like 55, the two of them. What do you think about this range that they're being drafted now?
I think it's too high for DJ Moore anyway. Justin Fields, I think, has a higher chance of paying off. But again, it's like these quarterbacks are so close with the range of outcomes that, why are we still passing up on these receivers for Justin Fields? And then DJ Moore, it's so annoying that one screen pass changes ADP because
Yeah,
I can't draft him anymore. Like he's
yeah.
currently my highest exposed player. We got Juju out of there. DJ Moore is now my highest exposed, but like I can't take him at ADP anymore because I have to. I already feel like I got great closing line value, so I'm good.
Yeah, and I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum here. If that's the duo that you need this year, I'm in trouble, Jack. I'm not going to lie. The Ramondre Stevenson drop due to the
Mhm.
Ezekiel Elliott signing by the Patriots. He's behind Jameer Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, who I guess we technically don't know where he's going to be playing yet. The Colts have announced they're willing to trade him publicly anyway.
Mhm.
Um, how are you treating Ramondre's a player you and I were steaming up early in May into June because the usage was really strong last year. I still think he's got a really good chance to have the same exact usage that we saw with Damian Harris when he was on the Patriots. I don't think Ezekiel Elliott in 2023 is the same player that he was 5, 6 years ago. How are you treating, I guess, Ramondre, obviously, but also Brees Hall, Dalvin Cook? What are your thoughts with this whole group
So
now that we've
with
got that information in?
with Ramondre, it's weird because I don't think, like you said, I don't think Ezekiel Elliott hurts Ramondre's value at all. So to me, he's the same, but I'm reluctant to click on him at ADP because I know he's going to fall past ADP enough where I can get him a little bit later. And if I click on him at ADP, I'm going to take him in almost every draft, which might be okay. And then Brees Hall, kind of the same thing. Like I know I'm going to get him past ADP a ton, but I'll take him in this 40 plus range. Like Brees Hall's practicing and Dalvin Cook's not, as far as last I saw.
So I like TJ Hawkinson here just because of the correlation with the Vikings. I don't know if I'm going to go with Cousins just yet, but I think the correct thing when Hawkinson is still here at 4-5, when you have Justin Jefferson, is to probably go that direction. I, I think I want to take Terry McLaurin as well. Positive news on the toe contusion or whatever you want to call it from last night's game is enough for me to be willing to add to my Terry exposure at somewhat of a cheaper cost here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's one of the players whose opinion I was looking forward to hearing yours on. I have so much already. I'm not sure how much more I'll be clicking on him, but it's compared to the other options, he's still we were clicking on him a bunch because we thought he was going to be great. He's still going to be great. He's just going to miss a couple weeks maybe.
Right.
So
I still have a hard time with DeAndre Hopkins. We already covered Christian Kirk. Deontay Johnson, I really like. I just felt like it was a little early here. I think if we've got a base expectation, McLaurin's going to be fine for week one, or even if he misses a game or two, I think he's still going to be an extremely high upside receiver. for the Commanders this season check, and so I'm willing to add to my exposure. Where do I sit on McLaurin at this point? I have roughly 20%. He is, after selecting them here, one, two, three, four, inside like the top 5 or 6 wide receivers that I have overall. My highest exposure is still Tyler Boyd. I have him on 20 of my rosters, a little over 30%. I've got 25% each so far of Mike Evans and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I still have a healthy amount of Godwin, Sutton, and the sneaky wide receiver that's still in there around the 20% range for me, super late, available in every contest in like the last 4 rounds. Definitely McCole Hardman with the Jets is still one of my guys.
Mm-hmm. I just want all-star point guard. Let's go. Good to see some live drafting. Hey, this stream happened because of your comment, so we appreciate you. And Derek Phillips, need Chuck to tickle the ivories for the fans. I'm not quite sure what that means, but if you tell me, I'm sure I'm willing to help
Oh
you guys out a little bit.
my God, I think he wants you to play the piano, my man. That I think is what he means by that.
Oh, that makes
Not
sense.
really, not really super hip to the Chicago area lingo, but I feel like piano keys are made. Whatever, man. I'm picking up what he's putting down. Is what I'm saying here. So,
Well, we still appreciate you,
um,
Derek. Thanks for the comment.
all right. What else can we touch on that has broken over the last couple of weeks? Feel like I haven't talked to you in a while. It's definitely good to
Yeah,
get together and do
yeah.
this. Um, my decision on McLaurin was basically between him and the player that went right after me, Aaron Jones, just because of the bring back with Green Bay, Week 17 game stack with the Vikings and the Packers. But I still think there's better opportunity. Well, I shouldn't flat out say better. I think there's other opportunities to get a Packer bring back with the Vikings here. And I like Aaron Jones, but this was my original take when we first started doing shows together. I'm still right here after looking at some of the preseason usage with Jordan Love. I think you can get AJ Dillon 4 or 5 rounds later, and you're likely to get similar median production at the running back position with Dillon versus Jones. So to me, I'm always going to take the cheaper guy when that's the case.
Yeah, AJ Dillon actually became one of my almost auto picks when he's available at near ADP. I'm up to 14%, and maybe 3 weeks ago I was definitely below 10. So AJ Dillon's a guy that I've been very interested. I think I compared him to Josh Jacobs on the last stream. I meant to compare him to Tony
Okay.
Pollard, where he
Okay.
might be the more efficient back, but he's the backup right now, and he has the standalone value. If he ends up starting, maybe he's Tony Pollard. Jackson Smith had surgery today,
Yes.
and that's very disappointing because I have a lot of Jackson Smith, but it's a minor wrist surgery. From what I read, it shouldn't really affect him, maybe a couple weeks, but he should be full speed by week 3, week 4, if that.
And these are some of the strange, I'll call them strange, draft picks we see in August when the full user base of fantasy football players starts to draft Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
Zay Flowers, I like Zay Flowers this season, but this is about a round ahead of where he typically goes. Jahan Dotson, another player, had a really strong game last night for the Commanders with Sam Howell, I guess the backup defense. But this is a little early for Jahan Dotson. How are you? I say all this as way of introducing the question to you of how are you mentally going into these drafts, knowing that we're going to start to see people do things way off the board pretty regularly.
So I noticed that some of the players whose ADPs haven't moved at all. I think Mike Williams is probably the big one in the first few rounds. Like I'm clicking on a lot of guys I wasn't necessarily clicking on earlier in the offseason, who's just they haven't had anything happen. They haven't played in preseason. There's no news, and so their ADPs haven't adjusted. But I think that where they're going, like Mike Williams at 45, seems like a really good risk to take. Like you're not losing that much if he underperforms, and if he is really good, then he could be a second round pick last year or next year. Because I think the thing with Mike Williams specifically is people thought he was injury prone, but I looked up and he plays. He only misses a couple games a season. It's just he misses a couple games a season. But players like that who have not played in preseason, Chris Godwin's another great example that I'm clicking a lot on recently. Because like George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison all went in a row, 64 through 66, and I've never seen that before. And so I'm going to try to avoid those guys now. I'm already loaded up on Zay Flowers and Addison anyway. And so just trying to get more of the guys whose ADPs haven't jumped.
Even as like a fifth wide receiver, I love Michael Pittman this season. He was someone I was thinking about here and maybe pivoting to go with the stack with his quarterback, but that's all right. We can go another direction here. And I am one of these users that is chasing the rise for James Cook in his
Mhm.
ADP. We've got pretty significant upside in Buffalo's offense. We got all the indicators that we need to be told that he's going to be definitely the early down back, if not the 3 down back. He was always considered a running back that has the upside in the passing situation, which is what we were talking about last year alongside Devin Singletary. Now we're talking about true 3 down upside. And then another running back that I will take here right back to back. Javonte Williams is a running back that I'm pretty high on with the Denver Broncos as well. Yes, he is coming off of that ACL injury that ended his 2022 season prematurely, but I don't think we've seen any real reason to feel like he's truly threatened as an RB1 by anybody on this roster. If he's going to be out there in week 1, he'll get his, 10 to 15 carries, if not more, and hopefully some involvement in the passing game. Not only do we have him pretty cheap here in best ball contests for the rest of the summer as an RB1, Chuck, he's going to be a fairly interesting play in daily fantasy, I think, in week 1. I'm starting to look ahead to that as well.
So James Cook first was a player who I wasn't interested in for most of the summer, but then now I'm getting to James Cook now. Something about just the projected, I don't know, I guess his participation in the football game, but then looking back at his college stats, someone pointed out that he can handle a big workload, and so that looks really good. And Javante, yeah, I don't know that I necessarily love Javante, but at pick 73, it's like it's fine. It's the
Right.
payoff is huge, and if it doesn't work out, you're really not going to lose anything. So
I guess my macro here, and it is sort of building off of a lot of the tenants a lot of analysts talk about, but I want young running backs that have the potential to outperform their year 1 production in the league on offenses where they're likely to dominate some of the touches, maybe get a lot of the work inside, not just the red zone, but the proverbial green zone, those touches inside the 5 for touchdowns. I feel like these are 2 running backs that fit that mold with upside this year, Chuck. And specifically with James Cook, because Denver could go either way, I think. Let's be honest about that. I just want players that are on good teams. I think there's
yes,
never a bad thing with being very, very overweight on players on teams that we expect to be very good. Obviously, Buffalo is one of those this year.
I agree. I just noticed Christian Kirk went at pick 68. Maybe his
Just
ADP's fallen since I looked, but I thought it was like 51 or 52, so that's a pretty large fall from grace. And then Darren Waller going at 56 is also a pretty decent jump from where he was a couple weeks ago.
the hype is real. Manjuk goes out there and gets 3 targets in a row in 1 drive with his starting quarterback, and you know what that means. He's going to get 300 targets this year. So that's why Darren Waller is rising. I'm being a little facetious here. I love Waller, but liked a
Yeah.
lot liked him a lot better when we were getting him a couple rounds later than that. I've seen Miles Sanders fall to this range a couple of times now, Chuck,
Yep.
and there has not really been. I don't think there's been much of a change there. I think he's just been kind of given veteran rest in these preseason games for Carolina. Whether or not he can be efficient with his touches is definitely going to be a debate with what's likely going to be an inefficient offense with a rookie quarterback. But I still think Miles Sanders is going to get decent work, and if he continues to fall into that almost 8th round here, that this is a range where I'm comfortable taking him. When he was going 5th, 6th round, I didn't really love it, but if he's going to go down here, I definitely am going to start taking more Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Miles Sanders averages 5 yards a carry. It's my baseline for a top running back. So, I mean, the touchdowns are probably going to be scarce compared to last season. Obviously, the offense is a little worse, but I don't think Bryce Young is nearly as bad as he's perceived to have been in the preseason. Like, he's going undrafted sometimes now from 2 games where they hardly scored, but I think they're going to be fine. That's the thing. Like with these preseason newses, these guys jumping from doing well and then guys falling from doing poorly. I'm more likely to draft the guy dropping doing from doing poorly. Like it's 1 preseason game, 2 preseason games. It shouldn't be that much of a difference.
No. All
Corey
right.
Lennox starting.
Reorienting myself here, I've got a couple of different directions I can go with quarterbacks for game stacks based off the players I've already selected. I think I'm still pretty firmly entrenched in the Green Bay, Minnesota street here, though. So a lot of running backs by ADP here. I'm kind of almost going down the board a little bit to avoid them. Um, you know what? I think Pacheco was fine. I let that auto pick because, again, running backs on good teams, we're getting a little bit of a dip on Pacheco because he's been banged up. I still think Pacheco is going to end up having a ton of touches in this offense. Maybe not right out of the gate, but as things move along. And I think we want. I'm going to do it. I don't have this wide receiver one here, but I want your proverbial shout out Rich Rebar, I believe, coined this terminology, Konami code quarterbacks, the cheat codes in fantasy football that have rushing upside. Anthony Richardson's going to be starting for the Indianapolis Colts. And I think we make this mistake every single time a player like this starts his career in the NFL, Chuck. We undervalue what that rushing upside is going to bring to the table in fantasy. Anthony Richardson goes out and has an average season with some of the rushing that we're projecting for him, and he's going to be a top 5 pick at this position next season. So this is great value for him.
Yeah, no, I like it. He's another guy I'm coming around on, especially like in my mind, it's better for him that Jonathan Taylor is gone. I understand that maybe the offense is worse, like scoring might be slightly down, but the absence of Jonathan Taylor has to be a positive for Anthony Richardson, right?
Yeah, and this is a quarterback where I'm willing to build a little bit differently. I don't because we're expecting him to have that rushing production and that passing production. I don't necessarily want to double stack him. I don't even necessarily feel like I have to stack him at all if I'm going to get standalone value out of Anthony Richardson. So I like having players like that on my team.
I will say Jelani Woods is a tight end that I'm taking a decent amount in the last round of drafts as kind of like you know, a breakout guy, I guess. So
Now, what do you think about Dalvin Cook versus Brees Hall? I believe for some Dalvin somewhat falling just went off the board here around pick 100. I've seen him go aggressively higher than this quite a few times. Um, are you in on Dalvin Cook? We've already got some reporting that he is going to probably carry the load to start the year. Maybe they'll ease Brees Hall back into a higher workload. I think if we think about the Jets backfield from a season long perspective, which is what we have to project for this stuff, you're going to end up having them splitting the difference somewhat, and they're not going to look great on the median outcome side of things. But I feel like both Cook and Hall are going to have that spike week potential that we want. The draft position doesn't really reflect that, though, right?
yeah, it's weird because I typically prefer the cheaper running back when it's going to be a possible split. But on this one, I think I still prefer Brees Hall over Dalvin Cook if I can get Brees Hall close to pick 50.
Mm-hmm.
But Dalvin Cook seems fine at his ADP too. I think if he's really going to carry the load even just in the beginning, if it falls off, my worry is what's his value in the playoff weeks. Like is he still going to be there? And I think he probably will, right?
Wow. I mean, this is one of the hardest starting schedules I think of any team in the NFL. This is what the Jets aren't going to quit. I mean that, so I'm not going to fully dive down that path and tell you that they're going to get to week 10 and if they're under 500, they're going to throw in the towel and start playing rookies and unproven players. That's not going to happen with the New York Jets. But I just do wonder what their season and their strategy looks like if they have a tough start, like the odds makers are projecting with their gauntlet schedule before their bye. And it does feel like Dalvin Cook is probably a player that they will use and abuse against these tough defenses to begin the season, and then they'll use their young buck later on in the season. Purely speculating, but I feel like that's what the game plan is here for the Jets usage wise.
It's just weird. Like I really don't know how to handle the 50 plus pick ADP difference between these two because I definitely prefer Brees, but I'm not sure I prefer him by 50 picks. Like I'm down on Dalvin Cook for sure, but if he's going to be playing, this seems like looking at the other running. I'm actually so what I wanted to say was I'm mostly taking two running backs
Mm-hmm.
in this range if I can. I was talking a lot on the previous streams about I'm targeting some earlier running backs, but then when the uncertainty started happening, I kind of backed off that a little bit, and now I think these running backs in this range are pretty insane value. Like any
Mm-hmm.
two, really. Maybe not Rashad White, but
So Rashad White is the one you're out on here. This is we don't have much discussion about this as a phenomenon, but I've started to feel like this tight window in the ninth and 10th round it's a little bit of a wide receiver dead zone right now, Chuck, and the board reflects it. We've had three of them go in these two rounds. Another vote in my book, my opinion, for going pretty wide receiver heavy early in the first few picks of your draft is that when you get down here, there's no confidence from the field at all on which ones are the other ones to take.
Right? I mean, Khalil Herbert came up, what, 15 picks almost?
Mm-hmm.
And which I agree with, though, because we got confirmation that he's going to run more with the starters, which is good. And it's, what, one or two preseason games, but it's information that I do think that we should be using. And he should have came up a little bit. He was probably going too low to begin with, so maybe this is just more appropriate for Khalil Herbert.
So what do I want to do here at 120 and 121? The the Kirk Cousins stack is gone, but you know what? I will treat my Minnesota players as if I have Anthony Richardson as my quarterback, and I think he's going to be better than Kirk Cousins anyway this season, so I'm okay with that here. I'm invested in that game environment now. So Jacoby Myers is a player that I think makes a ton of sense in this spot, but I don't have a strong lean for what to do with the second pick here. We'll have a 1-3-5-1 going. I like Penny. I'm kind of concerned about the Philadelphia running backs this season. I don't think, based off of the players I already have, I need to take a running back here. I don't really think there's a tight end that I need here. So I kind of lean towards just taking the next best available wide receiver that I can find here. And I guess we already talked about him a little earlier. To me, in this range, I like Nico, but Zay Jones on what's going to be, go back to the macro I brought up at the beginning of the show, players on good teams. We think Jacksonville's going to be good. Certainly think they're going to be better than Houston. So I'll take Zay Jones straight up over Nico here.
Yeah, I like it. I've been the same way. I just like Nico Collins, Lazard. I'm clicking Darnell Mooney a little bit because I believe in the Bears, but this guy was going at, I don't know, fourth, fifth round last season, and now he's pick 131. He's the second option, maybe third behind Cole Kmet. I'm not sure, but he's a guy who I'm taking some shots on because he did do well the previous season. So hopefully, if he can get back to that, then he's going to be a good value pick here. What I wanted to point out was Kenneth Gainwell went 115, which that's the earliest I've ever seen him go. I've never seen him go before AJ Dillon. Jalen Warren going 113, I understand because he looks awesome in that preseason game, so I kind of get that. It's just a question of if the staff is actually going to give him more carries than Najee, or even if just splitting the carries would be enough for Jalen Warren.
Just thinking about some of the other quarterbacks I can select here to close out my roster. Sam Howell would make sense with Terry, Jimmy Garoppolo with Jacoby Myers. Um, I don't hate, I don't think he's going to be there for me, but I don't hate quarterback running back correlation. So Russell Wilson, even someone I'm kind of in on here if I need him for a second quarterback with Anthony Richardson. But honestly, I think the one I'm honing in on, and if you're watching the show, drafting in this contest, yeah, you can aggravate me by doing this. Sam Howell, what do we think about Sam Howell now that we've seen him play a little bit with the starters, Chuck, and we've gotten the confirmation that he's going to at least start the season as the starter for Washington? Are you taking him at all?
Yeah, I've been taking Sam Howell a bit more. I think only when he's correlated though, or maybe if I need a quarterback late and I don't have any correlation, I'll take Curtis Samuel with Sam Howell. But I don't mind it. He's like, there's so many good quarterbacks at the end of this draft now that it makes things a little bit difficult.
And I think the other confirmation we just got, Baker Mayfield in over Kyle Trask officially to at least start the season for the Bucks. That situation does feel, Washington feels dicey to me. Tampa Bay feels dicier to me because we're not expecting the Buccaneers to be very good this season. But I suppose there is a path based off of the talent that we know is on that offense for them to outperform expectation, and maybe Baker retains the job there. How do you feel about Baker Mayfield? I know early in the process here, way early, like May, we were both very heavy on the Bucks, and I think we were both pumping the brakes on Baker Mayfield for a while there throughout this competition with Kyle Trask. Have you adjusted your mentality at all, or are you still kind of taking it easy at quarterback there?
I have just, it's not that I guess I am kind of nervous about drafting Baker, even though I'm in on his receivers now and even like Kate Auden. But I have typically finished my quarterback before Baker. If I need a last second quarterback, I've been clicking on Ryan Tannehill.
Okay.
Just like what you're saying, like I think Sam Howell has a much better chance of retaining the starting job the whole year. Like Baker certainly could, but if you're comparing the two, Sam Howell is more likely to be starting in Week 17, I think, barring injury.
The ADP reflects it. A
Mhm.
player I think is kind of likely to retain his starting job all year, that it goes right around the same range. It is Mac Jones. I don't think the Patriots have another quarterback on the roster that's really going to threaten his position. Now, I guess the only thing you could say there is if the Patriots are going to be below 500 again in December, and we're talking about payout structures weighted to week 17, maybe the Patriots do want to evaluate Bailey Zappi and see if they want to make a change at quarterback, because Mac Jones is quickly coming up, believe it or not, on the expiration of that rookie deal. And picking up the option is a decision the Patriots will have to make there. But Mac Jones being basically free in the 18th round, I still think that's a little too low for him.
Yeah, I've been picking Mac Jones, another guy. I just checked. I have 10% Mac Jones versus like 3.5% Baker Mayfield. So apparently I'm clicking Mac Jones, but I don't think he has any type of ceiling. Like if
That's the
depending on
problem.
playoff week, I'm not going to win the tournament. I need like it. Maybe he can help me get there by filling in some weeks where he puts up 22 and my other quarterback just doesn't have a good game or something. But Baker, like Mac Jones, is not going to be the quarterback you need in Week 17.
Oh man, let's clip that and put that up as a short clip
Yep.
on the channel, Derek. Let's please clip that, because we're flag planning. Mac Jones is not the quarterback you need in Week 17 this year. I like it. I like the confidence there. Desmond Ritter, for whatever reason, we're talking about round 18 quarterbacks right now. We're just going to stay on this thread. Baker Mayfield, Desmond Ritter, those are the other starters in that range right now. Um, I do kind of feel like if both those guys still have their jobs in week 17, Chuck, they're probably better picks to outperform Mac Jones at least. So
I
definitely on the
agree.
same page there.
Yeah, I agree.
I, I
So
haven't wrapped my head around Sam Laporta's rising cost either. I understand it. He's going to be the starting tight end for the Lions, but I don't really understand why we're aggressively steaming him up the draft board. I don't know if the volume's going to be as high as people are expecting here.
Well, looking at like Sam Laporta's rise, there's a couple other rookie quarter tight ends that have came up 30 picks. Musgrave and oh my gosh, Dallas guy, Dallas, not the rookie, but
Ferguson.
yeah, those guys have came up 30 picks in the past couple of weeks, and like I kind of get it. Like everyone's drafting the end of draft tight ends. I have been, but it just seems kind of I don't know. Rookie tight ends, don't trust them.
Talked about this with Brian, I believe, on a preseason video. Tyler Algier is projected by Falcons beat writers to still see pretty close to 200 touches as the backup running back in this offense. I don't really know I don't think I can communicate effectively enough just how much I think that's a great volume for an RB2. You don't really see that on any offense in the NFL. We're projecting Atlanta to still be very run heavy, and obviously the upside is massive if anything happens to Bijan. So I'll continue to take Algier aggressively here in this range. And then MVS, I know it's not like the sexiest available option on the Chiefs. People want Rashee Rice, people want Sky Moore, people want Kadarius Toney, but we saw at the end of last season, MVS was playing a ton of snaps at wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs in big, meaningful playoff games. We've seen in limited spurts here in the preseason, he's playing virtually all the snaps at wide receiver while Mahomes has been in the game. You don't have to love MVS the player. You have to love the usage of MVS and the fact that he's going to be out there on the field with Patrick Mahomes. You got to be out there for good things to happen. So I'm going to continue to take MVS pretty aggressively in this range.
I saw a tweet I liked the other day. I was like, the Chiefs are projected to score the most points in the NFL this season. Why are only two of their skill position players going in the top 100, Kelsey and Isaiah Pacheco? And it's because there's question marks on the other guys. No one knows. And this is a perfect because All-Star Point Guard asked, what's our thoughts about the Kansas City wide receivers? Can't seem to get a feel for who to grab and pass over in my drafts. Tony slash Sky Moore are close together, and then Rice slash MVS are close as well.
The reality is the usage is going to fluctuate, and guys are going to have a lot of spike week potential. People want exposure to the best offense in the league, Chuck. That's the phenomenon that's going on here, right? I think just looking at ceiling, which is something we talk about a little bit more, and I think we communicate more effectively when we're putting out some of our daily fantasy content that we put out. MVS is a classic spike week player. He's not typically going to get a bunch of easy PPR points where he gets 6, 7, 8, 9 catches a game, but the nature of how he sees opportunities on the football field, he'll get his 3 to 5 targets, but they'll be deep down the field, more than 15 yards down the field. And if he catches one of those and breaks free of his defender and scores, that's really all you need for him to crack your starting lineup in a contest like this, where you can start 4 wide receivers depending on how many points they score. So at cost, the fact that I can get a wide receiver that, provided health stays there, which is all we can presume whenever we're drafting anybody, MVS should have a really good chance to have the most playing time with Patrick Mahomes. And I feel like that's a pretty safe thing to wager on in round 13.
I think so too. I mean, like you said, if he rips off 3 long touchdowns throughout the season, that's probably enough by itself to pay off his draft cost because he's going to have a couple more catches in that game, and just 2, 3 spike weeks is enough. And I think last year he had two, maybe he had three, but I'm pretty sure he had at least 2 good spike weeks that were usable last year.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had a pretty big, wouldn't impact a format like this, but he had a pretty big game, I believe, in like the AFC Championship or something like that. That was pretty good for playoff game stacks as well. So, obviously a lot of that on MVS and the Chiefs here, but there are other players like that around the league on other offenses too that go in this range that I'll be equally interested in. Rashid Shaheed from the Saints is like that. Just kind of looking at who's still available to take that could be in a similar position. Goes a little later than this, actually pretty close to Shaheed. Devontae Parker with the Patriots might be a similar type of player. He's not going to have a ton of volume, but he'll be a boundary wide receiver that will get those types of targets. So when we're playing tournaments, not just in like a daily, weekly format, but best ball tournaments over 17 weeks, late in the contest, these are the perfect wide receivers to target.
Yeah, there's so many receivers that I'll take in this range, and it's like we're not expecting them to perform all season. We really only need 2 or 3 good spike weeks to help
Wow.
fill in and complement for the other guys. And this has been a weird draft. Like I
Yeah.
haven't been doing any underdog drafts, but like there's a lot of reaches here. Even Tank Dell and Jonathan Mingo for Mr. Pollock here.
CEH has been getting starters reps with Mahomes in the preseason games, but a lot of that is due to the fact that Pacheco has been held out, right? So I don't know what to make of it other than we can still confirm he's going to have a chance. He's going to be on the roster and he's going to have a chance at those early down touches if Pacheco is going to miss extended time. This is a pretty aggressive rise up the board, though, for sure.
It's like, yeah, I mean, here's one thing though that I'm ignoring ADP more than I used to, and that I'm really just trying to get my guys. I'm not gonna, if my favorite guy, like for example, I don't know if I'm picking at like pick 130 and I don't like anyone there, I'm just gonna take KJ Osborne because he's the guy I feel comfortable taking there, and I'm kind of surprised he hasn't risen up draft boards a little bit with the difference between him and Addison, but
Absolutely nobody wants Rondell Moore. Like even if their life depends on it, it's very amusing to me that that's kind of something that's been going on here. Old reliable here in this range for I know for you has started to become this for me. Devin Singletary, he's going to play. He's going to be kind of boring, but he's going to have a chance to put points up every single week because he's going to get some touches. So I am okay with him in this spot. And then I want a Green Bay bring back for Jefferson and Hawkinson, but having two tight ends in the same game feels a little weird to me. So I don't think I want Musgrave. Um, I'll go with Curtis Samuel because I kind of already tipped my hand and said I'm interested in Sam Howell. So that kind of makes sense here.
I don't mind it. On that Rondale Moore note, I've been in a spot like you where he was already 20 picks past ADP. I don't think he was that extreme, but I passed on him, and then he was still there the following pick, and I just took him then. But I think people are kind of getting interested in Michael Wilson, like kind of just the unknown. Who's going to perform in Week 17 is what I'm thinking about, and
Oh,
I'm taking a
this
shot on
person
Michael.
had absolutely no reason to take Sam Howell, but they did. So that's okay. I'll get over it. It's $25 draft. I don't need Sam Howell that bad in my life. I will get over it. I will find another quarterback to be my backup to Anthony Richardson. But that's what happens, man, in these contests with all these August drafters that are in here now, right? We're just kind of willy nilly reaching for players. Sam Howell, Brock Purdy back to back in round 14 and 15 with eyeballing it, none of their wide receivers to pair them with. It's a move. It's not one I would make.
Nope. Brock Purdy might be one of the only guys I take completely uncorrelated if I need a second quarterback, and it's just because none of the San Francisco guys go past pick 55. So unless you're taking like Juwan Jennings, I guess Elijah Mitchell, but that doesn't really count.
Jawan Jennings, I think I've definitely selected him at least once to force correlation. And that was where I drew the line in the sand and was like, I'm probably forcing too much correlations in my lineup. So, okay. We need some kind of quarterback plan here. I've already got 8 wide receivers. I'm certainly willing to go beyond that if I need to. I could. I already said I'd be willing to do this with Russell Wilson. I didn't do that. Desmond Ritter, CJ Stroud. I've got quarterback, running back correlations there. A little bit more powerful, Chuck, in the regular season, and there is a regular season prize pool to be aware of here. Obviously, not as juicy as the $3 million first place prize in the playoffs, but you get a little bit of overperformance from the Texans offense or the Falcons offense this season, and you're invested in a quarterback and a running back from those teams. That can be okay too. I think we can make that work.
Absolutely, I think so. Yeah,
So
I'm actually getting more interested in CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, where before I was on Bryce Young more. But yeah, I guess I'm just more drawn to the Houston offense right now, like you said.
it's just really easy to find pairing partners with those all these quarterbacks really at the end of the drafts. I don't have any of Mr. Tannehill yet. That's the only one that I have not selected at all in this contest. I will probably avoid Ritter here just because I did take AR 15 and he's not wearing 15 this year, so I guess that doesn't work. But he's got the same bye week as Ritter, so that won't make a ton of sense here.
Are you taking Kyler ever? I'm kind of not taking Kyler anymore, trying not to anyway.
Not not uncorrelated. If we're thinking about the prize pool at the end of the season, I believe he'll be out there, but I don't think it makes sense to be invested in him without Marquise Brown or James Conner or even Michael Wilson, because if obviously he's going to be the one that you want to own late, some of those players are going to play well too. So I'd like to have some correlation there.
Yeah, like that comment though. We're talking about we want players from good teams, and it's like so many of the players I like are on bad teams or projected to be bad teams anyway.
We want players on good teams, and I'm out here saying I love the Bucks this year. I still think good players can perform well on bad teams. It's just the players that we feel. It's more like these ancillary pieces: wide receiver twos, tight ends, RB twos on good teams. I think are definitely much better picks than their counterparts on mid to bad teams. So, all right.
Corey Davis going in 190. It's pretty interesting.
These are just not. Paris Campbell went pretty aggressively early.
Calvin
Yeah,
Austin
man,
at what?
this has been quite a ride. I can't say I'm happy with the level of correlation that I have at this point. This has not really gone the way that I anticipated. I don't think there's a tremendous amount of risk at this point to doubling up on rookie quarterbacks because mostly because I can stack it. I can go Bryce Young, I can go Hayden Hurst, and at least I've got another stack there now by doing that. So I'm fine with that.
That's one thing I do try to do is if the my quarterback's tight end is there, I'm probably going to try and take him.
Um,
Let's see who
and I
else.
actually backdoored a week 17 stack there because I had Zay Jones. So that's Carolina, Jacksonville in week 17. We're not even, Chuck, we've been doing this for so long that like it's just, I probably knew that without even knowing it, right? So that works too.
Oh, I have like so I still have my correlation stuff up on my screen when I'm drafting, but I'm not paying super attention to it. Like I'm still using it for tie breaks, but I'm still ending up with 3 to 5 games of correlation by the end of it. Like and that's before I was almost always going to have at least 5 games of correlation, but now, like I said, I'm more getting my guys than I was before.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting to see Matt Stafford and Kyler Murray go this late. This might be the latest I've seen them two go.
I think it's Matthew Stafford is kind of, we already saw well, this is your area of the world, so maybe you're a little more intimately fond of what happened in 2021 there with the Rams. They had their really, really strong season there with Cooper Kupp, win the Super Bowl against the Bengals. Stafford still wasn't like a great fantasy quarterback that year, you know? And I think that's kind of what reinforces maybe the drop here for Stafford in some of these contests. Even if he has a really, like he has a sun run basically, and he has another good season, and they're competing for a Super Bowl again this year, what's his range of outcomes going to be in fantasy football? And it's still probably a QB2, right? So
Yeah,
I think that's why people aren't as interested in Matthew Stafford. But as a free pick, effectively in round 17, 18, I think he's fine. If this was like a normal managed league setting, I probably would have taken him over Bryce Young. But given I don't have to worry about that so much, and I'll focus a little more on having correlated upside where I can't set my own lineup, the Carolina pairing just made more sense to me.
I agree. Yeah, no, I like it a lot. We have another question from All Star Point Guard. Are we drafting any of the undrafted free agent running backs, Hunt, Lenny, etc., or just mostly passing on them? I'm upset that I didn't take more Ezekiel Elliott on Underdog before he signed, but that hasn't led. Like I already have like 10% Leonard Fournette, so I'm over the field. Hunt, I think I have zero, so I'm never going to take him. But I think I'm more comfortable just taking shots on guys that are already on teams. I have a couple later. Well, I have a late round running back, my James Robinson this year, Kieran Williams. Talked about him a couple
Oh
times,
my
but
God, no way. I have been taking much more Kyron Williams over the last couple of weeks myself as well. We are like we're not even in like the same rooms doing these things, but we're doing many of the same things. We've had several conversations about the season this year, so I'm not tremendously surprised by that. But look, we know Sean McVay likes to rest his important players on offense in preseason. Kyron Williams has not played. He's telling us something by doing that. He's telling us that Kyron Williams has a role on this offense. Can't really ask for much more than that at this point in the calendar. And when he's still on, I believe he's still on the board here right now, Chuck. Kyron Williams is still a very, very good pick at this point in the draft. Jamin, one more take about another team. I think we got some confirmation today that Chris Evans is ahead of Chase Brown as the third down back slash RB2 for the Bengals. So taking more shots on Evans now is probably good as well.
Chris Evans is a second year player, right?
I think he's either a second or a third year player.
Okay,
I
but
honestly don't remember.
he's the guy that everyone got burned on last season, though.
Yes.
So like imagine getting burned on Chris Evans 2 years in a row. It feels so bad.
The Samaji Perine role is something that has been considered valuable. That's why people have been chasing Chase Brown. Well, I didn't even do that on purpose. Chasing Chase Brown for so long since he was drafted. But Chris Evans getting some confirmation from, I believe it's Paul Denner, who writes for the athletic.com about the Bengals. I think that's obviously pretty good insight. He's very plugged in. We'll take Kyron Williams to close up the show, Chuck. How's that?
Love
We
it.
went with Underdog always gets a little weird with the last pick in the draft. It doesn't reflect it on the screen here for you. But I went with naked Anthony Richardson. I'm okay with that. He should be 1.5 players by himself with rushing upside. I've got Bryce Young with Hayden Hurst. I've got Zay Jones in the same game in week 17. I do have a correlation with Anthony Richardson. I have Jacoby Myers on the other side there. The Colts play the Raiders in week 17. I have Calvin Ridley as well. So I got a weird
Oh
2-2
yeah.
stack
Oh
correlation
yeah.
there with Carolina and Jacksonville. I wasn't even necessarily actively thinking about that. You've been watching the stream, you know that, but we've done enough of these shows together where I've kind of drafted for week 17 optimized lineups. I'll give myself credit. Maybe I just sort of knew that in the back recesses of my brain. Chuck, it
Oh
was
yeah.
a pleasure to join you at this late dinner kind of range hour for you folks over on the West Coast. We're going to have another couple of shows this week. We're not entirely sure when they're going to be, but when we have them, we will schedule them on the YouTube channel. So as always, please make sure you're subscribed, have the notifications turned on. You'll get an alert for our next show when we put it out. It is prime football, fantasy football draft season. We're going to do the best we can to bring you as many shows as possible between now and kick on September 7th between the Chiefs and the Lions, because we're excited for it too, guys, and we can't wait to keep talking about it. If you're new to Underdog, you haven't signed up yet, there is a promo code on the screen below us here for you to sign up, get a 100% deposit match on your first $100, start playing with $200 today. That'll give you about 8 entries here in Best Ball Mania 4, some entries to weekly winners. Maybe the eliminator that just popped up today will still be open for the next few days, Chuck. But that's going to do it for me for business on the show to close out the show here. Do you have anything you want to share before we get out of here?
No, just thanks everyone for watching. All Star Point Guard said thank you guys so much. Enjoyed it as always. Hey, we enjoy having you here. We appreciate you contributing to the chat. And there's a lot of players we didn't touch on, so make sure you watch the next draft so we can touch on those guys.
Absolutely. Chuck, always a pleasure to talk with you. Everyone, we will be with you as soon as we can. Thank you for watching.